Okay, welcome everyone to today's training. This is such an important one on taking control of your intake process and become masterful at identifying which clients are best suited to working with you. Okay, so this took me about 20 years to to work out. And for some of you, you might be also at the 20-year mark of this, which is why I've created this training, because no one is talking about this. So this is such an important aspect. If your own well-being is important to you, then you are going to want to take full control of your intake process. And we're going to explore why in today's training. Okay, so why take charge of your intake process? Okay, so by now, I've been talking about this a lot. Providing therapy or coaching or counseling, it's an energetic exchange. Okay, this whole idea of giving and receiving, give and take aspect. You're giving energy and receiving energy in return. And that's what allows us to continue for long periods of time doing this work, because it's an energizing experience, or sometimes it is anyway. Okay, so when you come from this basis of providing therapy or coaching is an energetic exchange, you realize that it involves you putting massive amounts of energy, in the form of your time, money, focus, dedication, learning, and sacrifices, the sacrifices that we make to get to a point where we can give this, where you can share your knowledge and wisdom with another person, where it could potentially change their life trajectory. Okay, so this is not something that we learned in a 6-week course where we didn't have to give up much of ourselves and we could just, do an online course and then go ahead and provide what we provide. It's taken many years or maybe decades to get to this point. And it's not just intellectual learning, it's also, our whole heart and bodies have gone into getting us to this point where we're able to provide this kind of guidance. And it is life-changing. Okay, so therefore, you've heard me say that I believe it's important that you work with clients who are able to receive what it is that you are giving. Okay, so that you can receive something back from their receiving and you can continue giving. Okay, so when you think about it like that, the costs of working with clients who are not a right fit for you right now, in terms of your style or your approach, the way you do things, the costs of that includes burnout, exhaustion, doubt and feelings of incompetence on your part, and going down rabbit holes of further training in areas that are not really of your conscious choosing. So you may find yourself engaging in training because you believe that's what I need to get better at, but you haven't sort of sat and paused to reflect on, if that's the area that you want to become more masterful in, or whether that's more of a default response because of these feelings of inadequacy of working possibly with a client who's not receiving, the guidance that you're providing. All right, so let's talk about why bums on seats is not working out for you. Okay, so this is the typical process or intake process for therapists. Okay, step 1, we send some kind of marketing, usually to GPs, maybe with a description of what diagnoses we treat. We might say, I treat depression, anxiety, trauma, addictions. Okay, it's very clinical kind of letter that describes what we do based on the diagnosis that the client has, because that's more palatable to GPs. Okay, then step 2 is that the GP might refer their patient to a therapist using a mental health care plan if you're in Australia. And they might even tell their client or their patient that they get 10 free sessions. Okay, this will get you 10 free sessions. Ooh. So that makes for an awkward conversation at the other end. The client then calls the clinic of the therapist. And often it's a practice manager or an admin person who takes the call. And yes, they've been trained in what questions to ask, and they do their best to see if that client is a match for the therapist, but it's usually based on what their presenting issue or their diagnosis is, not on all of these other factors that we're talking about here in this training, you know, around the point of the journey that the client is on and whether they'd be receptive to our style and our personality. So it's very client-focused. Okay, the therapist often has no contact with our clients until the first session, which really feels like, okay, we've started therapy now. If someone's coming to see us for that first session, there really is kind of that expectation that, okay, you're my new therapist now. So kind of missed the boat when it comes to really assessing whether this person is a right fit. Okay, and in all my years of supervising and mentoring other therapists, I've found that this process results in therapists getting stuck with clients that are not suitable for their approach, because it's completely bypassed the therapist's intuition and their objective judgment and skills in being able to read people. Okay. And it also completely eliminates this idea that the therapist has control over the clients they choose to work with. So it really fits nicely into all this self-sacrificing that we've been conditioned in our field, where we're like, well, we're not allowed to have any needs when it comes to deciding who we work with, because if someone's in suffering, then it's our job just to provide that service and not question it. Okay, but I've gotten to a point where I have realized that the way I work is I love being really direct. And sometimes I like joking around with my clients, and I want to know that I can say to all of my clients, you know, something like, can I just call you on that? Or can I just stop you right there? Or, you know, how's that working for you? You know, I want to know that I can say those types of things to my clients. Okay? And they're going to actually receive that approach. And we're not going to have to spend the entire session, you know, working through why they feel that I'm not listening to them. You know, this is just my style, is to be able to spot patterns really quickly and trust that there's enough rapport there and that I can step in and do that. Now, you know, I have worked in a setting where I know that I haven't been able to do that, because I'm working with clients with more complex presenting issues, with personality disorders, and I know that I have to really tone that down and show up in a very different way, in a lot more gentler, softer approach. And I can do that, but I know that I'm most effective when I can spot those patterns, call them out immediately, and we can get right into the change work. Okay, so I really would like you to think about this imbalance of this system and why bums on seats, whilst that may be the focus for, say, let's say a practice manager or clinic director, that it may not be working at the other end of the scale, which is the person providing the service. Okay, right. So let's have a think about this really well-known model of our comfort zone being that sort of nice, comfy place in the middle, the stretch zone or the learning zone being sort of outside of that comfort zone, and then the panic zone being beyond the stretch zone. When we're stretched too far, we don't have the capacity or the resources to take on the new challenge, and we go into panic. All right. So my approach when new clients are calling me or making contact with me these days, and it's always via a discovery call, a 15-minute discovery call. I want to talk to them in person. I'm looking at whether they are ready to step into that stretch zone, because they're going to be stretched when working with me. I'm going to challenge them on some of their default, beliefs and behaviors that they're comfortable with. They're comfortable in those known beliefs and habits and behaviors, but they're not working for them. That's why they've reached out to me. And because I know my style, my approach is to point out these patterns and develop new ways of thinking, which I'm sort of inviting my clients to kind of take on and adopt. I want to know, are they ready to step into that stretch zone? Okay, so that means that we have to ask some challenging questions in that first intake call. And this might be hard to sort of at first to take on board as a therapist, because we're used to being very gentle, very compassionate. And of course, all those qualities are very important qualities, I believe, that we bring to the table. But we are also challenging our clients. And we're calling them out on unconscious or subconscious habits or beliefs that we can see are not working for them. And we know that once they shift these old patterns, these beliefs, that they're going to start getting the results in life that they want. They want to feel more freedom or more excitement or more love or more courage. And we can see how they can get there, but they're going to have to do some hard work. Okay, so these are some things that I would invite you to ponder beforehand, before you have that initial call. And I'm assuming, based on this training, that all of you are going to get to a point, if you're not already there, you're going to get to a point where you have contact with any new clients going forward. That even if you have a practice manager who fields that first call for you, this training is based on the assumption that you are going to have some kind of contact with that client. And yes, it takes 15 minutes, out of your day, but it's going to save you a lot of time and a lot of energy going forwards. If you just say, okay, 15 minutes call, I know that in 15 minutes, I'm a pretty good judge of character. And because now I know what space I'm working in and who are the clients that I want to work with, I have faith that that 15 minutes is going to tell me, whether I'm the right person for this potential new client or whether they're not. Okay, so here are a few questions for you to ponder beforehand, before you even get on the phone with them. You can read over this first. Ask yourself, what old beliefs and habits will the clients who work with me, what will they be required to let go of to make the shifts that you can help them make? Just have a think about, what are some of the schemas, and therefore what are some of the beliefs that they're going to have to say goodbye to, some of the old stories, some of the old narratives. Okay, what attitudes will your new potential client need to bring to the table to withstand the challenges that your healing process will create for them? Attitudes like, I'm ready to do this work. I just want someone to help me figure out what I need to shift. You know, I'm ready to take responsibility. I'm ready to do something different. They're the sort of attitudes that I would be looking for in that first initial phone call. Okay. Also, what qualities or personality traits will the clients who work with you need to bring to the table as a prerequisite? So you do not feel compelled to instill it in them. So for example, I need my clients to have a certain degree of insight or self-reflection, you know, like a curiosity about themselves and about what they're bringing to the table, how they're contributing to their own problems. So to be quite self-reflective, that's a quality that I need someone to already bring to the table for me to successfully do some work with them. And I have certainly worked with people that don't bring that to the table. And that can certainly develop over, say, like a 1 or 2 year period in therapy, you know, which is that really traditional schema therapy, a lot of reparenting, a lot of, you know, work on the relationship, on the therapy relationship. And it's very satisfying work. It's very satisfying work to take someone through that entire process because they've missed out on having someone help them to even reflect and go inwards. They haven't had that in their own childhoods. So it's very satisfying. But with regards to the niche that I'm currently working in, it's not going to work there because I'm wanting to work with people over a much shorter time frame these days, get right to the change work and not go through that sort of that lengthy reparenting work, which I'm not, you know, trying to turn anyone off. It's just dependent on where you're at in your life right now, how much time you have up your sleeve, what might be going on in the background in your work. You know, all of those things come into play when deciding what type of process do I want to guide people through. Okay, so what qualities will the clients need to bring to the table so that you're not instilling it in them? Okay, and finally, have a think about what's the point A, which is where your clients are at right now, or when they start work with you. What does that look like? What are some of the symptoms? What are some of the complaints they have? What are the patterns that they typically bring? And then what's the point B that you get people to? When you work with people similar to this new client, where is it that they end up? What does that look like? What do they start to feel when they get to point B? What are some of the new opportunities and possibilities that come up for your clients when they get to that point B as a result of the process that you take them on? So this is something that you really want to ponder before that initial call, because you're wanting to speak with this new potential client and find out, is this someone that I can take from point A to point B? And of course, there's no guarantees, and we don't know for sure if everyone that we work with, we're going to get them to that point B. But we want to give ourselves the best chance of that, because that's just more efficient. It's just more efficient if we're working with people that we know want to get to point B, and we know the pathway to get to point B, but we don't know the pathway to get to point M or N or O. You know, we're not that kind of therapist. We just focus on people that are interested in getting to point B. It's just more efficient. It's just better, you know, in terms of energy. Just the physics of it is better if we're all working within, you know, a range that we have this sort of competence and enthusiasm and passion. All right. Okay, so here are some questions that I might ask new potential clients since developing this new process. And you can adapt them to however would suit you, the sort of wording that you use. And well, the first question is sort of obvious, more of a broad, what is it that you'd like help in addressing in your life right now? What brought you to book this call with me? Something nice and broad and general like that. And just allow them to kind of give you a sense of what it is that they're seeking help with. Okay. Then I might ask something like, what changes would you like to see as a result of us working together? So I love this question because they're giving you the solution. They've thought about what the solution looks like in their life. They've painted somewhat of a picture and now they're sharing that with you. Okay, and then you get to decide whether that's the type of change that you help people to achieve. Right now, in terms of how I'm working in this very specific niche, just working with other therapists really who are wanting to, heal from like self-sacrifice schema, unrelenting standard schema, and experience more freedom. So it's a very specific niche. The clients that I speak to on the phone, they're usually able to describe to me these changes. Well, I want to, I just want to enjoy my work more, and I want to wake up and be looking forward to seeing the clients, and I'm like, great, I can help you get there. Versus someone who's not that clear about what changes they're seeking. And how would I know that? Because they're not able to answer that question. If I said, what changes would you like to see as a result of us working together? They might be stumped. They might say, I hadn't really thought about that, or I'm not sure, or I just don't want to feel like this. We might dig a bit deeper, but the response to that question helps me to understand where they're at in this process. Because if they're at the very start, then they're probably better suited to working with someone else who can take them through a much longer process. Okay, another question to ask is, what do you believe has stopped you from getting there on your own or getting there so far? Okay, so this is another useful question for me because it helps me see where they're at with their insight, how much they've reflected on, their own contribution, what they might be bringing to the table. Okay. Also, what are some of the old beliefs or habits you believe you will need to release to get these outcomes? So I would word that differently if they weren't a therapist. I mean, therapists understand what I'm talking about there, but if you weren't working with therapists, just tweak the wording of that. You could just say habits. What are some of the habits you think you might need to give up then if you want to make those changes? Okay, because they're habits, ingrained habits, that are the problem for most of our clients. There's these ingrained habits that all link back to their schemas, their beliefs, their emotional reactions, etc. So ask your new clients, what are some of the old habits you have that you might need to release? Yeah. Okay. Also, I ask my new potential clients, are you at a point in your life where you feel ready to step into this new version of yourself? Why I like that question is because you are inviting them to step into a new version of themselves, someone with a different mindset, different outlook, a different degree of awareness, a different degree of responsibility and accountability. So I want to know, are you at a point in your life right now where you feel ready to step into this new version of yourself? And a new client who's, suited to working with me, there'll be a level of excitement there. Yes, I am. Because they're kind of fed up with all the old patterns. They're done with the old patterns and they're excited to experience these new possibilities that come with this work. Okay. And also, do you feel like you have the resources to support you to make these changes? Okay. So people have different resources at different points in time, internal and external resources. And this work does put a kind of load or burden or pressure on a client's shoulders. To have to go away and think about all this stuff and catch themselves when they're engaging in the old habits. That requires resources. So we want to ask new potential clients, do you feel like you have the resources to support you to make these changes? Because this is going to take effort and energy and dedication outside of our session together. All right, so these are some of the questions that I ask on an intake call, and all of this happens in under 15 minutes. Okay, so let's just take a moment to pause and reflect. Okay, so what thoughts and feelings are brought up for you as you imagine asking these direct, possibly more challenging questions to a new client on an intake call? So let's just take 1 or 2 minutes just to ponder that. Okay, so can you see the difference between these two examples? One where you try and smooth things over and say, oh, that's okay, let's book you in. And that person, I can assure you, will eventually find a therapist who has that capacity to do that more sort of longer therapy process at the start. There's loads of therapists that do that. But if you are pursuing this sort of path where you're like, I really want to just work in this space, this sort of defined space, then you are just delaying getting to that point by taking on clients that don't fit with that. So what we're looking for, what I'm looking for anyway, is to work with clients who are ready to receive what I have to offer. They're in a receptive state. Their arms are nice and wide open like this. They can't see their blind spots. They need another person because we're social creatures, we're relational creatures. We learn about ourselves through our relationships with other people. Someone who cares about us and our well-being will give us feedback, will challenge us. If we're crapping on with some faulty belief system and the other person who's sitting there and cares about us can see that that's a really unhealthy belief system, they're going to call us out on it and they're going to say, hey, like maybe see it like this, or, challenge us to shift our thinking. Okay, so I want to be working with clients who are ready to receive that versus resisting that. Now, I've worked with both and it's fine. And maybe at some point in the future, I will go back to working with more treatment-resistant clients or clients that take a longer time to crack and to break through and to create that trust. But having done that for 10 years and, trying to juggle all the other things of life, I found that I needed to work in more of this sort of space of flow. Okay, so what I want to say here is that clients who are ready to receive your specific guidance will feel energized by your challenging questions. They will actually feel excited on these phone calls as you ask them these challenging questions, like, are you ready to shift this? And what do you need to give up? You know, they'll be like, oh, you know, like it'll feel like light bulbs are going on during that phone call. And they will actually feel energized, yes, challenged, but energized by your questions. Okay. And they will sense that you're the person who will gently challenge them beyond their comfort zone and into a zone of growth and learning that they're ready to step into. So talking about niches, I mean, your niche can include a specific personality trait that you help people navigate. Like you might work with people with perfectionism or with people pleasing, or people who like to control things a lot, or disorganized people. Yeah, any personality trait that might be in the way of them experiencing greater levels of well-being. Your niche can include obviously a diagnosis, depression, PTSD, trauma, addictions, eating disorders. But even then, that's very broad, because you can still get someone with a diagnosis, but with different personality traits and different points on their healing journey. Your niche could include a phase of life or a normal life event, like someone who's in their early career, new parents, divorce, retirees, whatever. Or your niche can also include a point in your client's healing journey, like they come to you and they say, I'm ready to start setting boundaries with my mother-in-law, or I'm ready to be more accountable in my business, or I'm ready to look at how I make excuses or procrastinate, or I'm ready to take a risk and get on dating sites and open myself up to maybe a new relationship. So they're all life events that could be your niche. Okay. So I just want to go through the wellbeing codes as a niche guide, okay? Because you've all got access to our self-guided content. And so this is going to help you when you start identifying what are the schemas that my clients typically have, and what are the healing pathways that I need to be able to get good at helping them with. So the connection code, good for clients who want to deepen their relationship to self or others, improve their self-worth and bypass shame, get better at emotion regulation and self-soothing, parenting, friendships and overcoming loneliness, or love and spiritual growth. Okay, the confidence code, good for clients who want to develop more autonomy and inner strength, who want to get better at speaking up, setting boundaries, ending a relationship, living solo, pursuing goals and new career or work choices, staying grounded during conflict and true to themselves. Okay, the optimism code is going to be good for clients who experience depression and anxiety due to unresolved fears, shifting from negativity to more of an appreciation of life, long-term relationship stability, taking risks and creating financial security and abundance, releasing control and obsessional thoughts or worry. Okay, the self-appreciation code is going to be good for clients who are high achievers, who are stressed, overwhelmed, and burnt out. Also good for perfectionistic parents. Good for nervous system regulation and creating more balance. Good for people who want to be less serious and more playful in their life. Also, they want to embrace more play, pleasure, and beauty to balance out, their high-pressure jobs or other demanding life situations. The fairness code is going to be good for clients who might be experiencing depression and bitterness due to a lack of reciprocity in their relationships. People who want to shift out of helplessness and victimhood. People who want to develop more grace, gratitude, and compassion with self and others. People who want to set boundaries with others and not feel like they're on the short end of the stick. and also people who want to release blame and fault finding in their relationships with others. And then the self-discipline code is good for clients who want to address addictions, want to pursue challenging long-term goals like businesses that require perseverance and persistence, and also for overcoming feelings of frustration, boredom, entitlement, and impulsivity that can derail us from our core values and our relationships with others. Okay, so there's a lot of content in there. It's all very schema focused. So as long as you have a good sense of the schemas that you think are getting in the way for your clients, then there will be a lovely healing pathway outlined in the wellbeing codes, which is going to be great when you're at that phase 3 of treatment, which is really getting in, doing the changes, maintaining those changes. Okay. All right. So to conclude today's training, I invite you all to just trust your intuition when you get on a phone call with a potential new client, knowing what you know about what gifts you bring, what wisdom and knowledge and experience you bring to the table. Trust that your intuition will tell you by the end of that phone call whether this is a client who is going to benefit from your guidance and whether it's going to be an energizing experience.